right, good morning and welcome to Counterpoints. How you doing, Emily?
I'm doing great. This is our last show together before Thanksgiving, so just know, Ryan, that I'm thankful for you and thankful for everybody who's watching.
Thankful for you too. Thankful for all of you, and don't burn your porch down. Deep frying your turkey.
We were just talking about this. Ryan and producer Griffin are obsessed with deep frying turkeys, apparently. But we also
do it
have
outside and not on wood.
Yes. Yeah. Now, BreakingPoints.com is where you go for a premium subscription. But if you can't cover the premium subscription, not the best use of your money right now, you're spending all of it on turkey deep fryers. Ryan, what can you do?
Look, if you share our stuff, that is almost more valuable than a Breaking Points premium subscription. Like it, subscribe, and also, importantly, share it. Like, make sure that we're spreading this, because right now is the most important time to kind of get this in front of people, because the iron is hot. People are like, wait a minute, we've been lied to for so long. Right. And wait, what's going on with this Mika and Joe thing? What? I thought these were the resistance leaders.
Yes.
And now they're like angling for cabinet positions.
The time is ripe.
So the time is ripe. The mainstream media has discredited itself. I think if you've been watching this program over the last several years, you have been much better informed than any of your peers. So you can either keep that by keeping it a secret, and then you can be the smart one in your social group.
Which is one way to do it.
Which is one way to do it, or you can share this more generally. And also, in the comment section, it's always nice if people say when the news actually starts in the A block.
Yes, because often Ryan will monologue in the, no, kidding. Ryan does have a great monologue prepped for the end of the show that's going to be about why Democrats lost. I'm really excited for that. We're going to start with new Trump appointments. Also, late last night, naming an education secretary. We're going to walk through all of that. And actually on the point Ryan was...
They're even getting funnier almost.
There's a WWE connection. We'll get into that in just a moment. We'll be talking about Matt Gaetz, and to the point you were just making, Ryan. I mean, I think this has been covered very poorly by media. There's just a lot more context that makes the story, whether you love or hate Matt Gaetz, actually more interesting. So we'll be talking about Matt Gaetz today. We'll be talking about the second day of Morning Joe outrage. Why is it worth talking about? Because it's fascinating to see how the inner circle of the Joe and Mika world is reacting to them. We'll be talking about the ongoing trial of Laken Riley and the murder of Laken Riley, and we have a guest, Ryan, talking about Israel. Yeah,
Haviv Rettiger is a very high-profile journalist in Israel. I would describe him as kind of a bit to the right of Netanyahu. So we'll let him plant himself on the spectrum, but that's, I don't think he would even consider that to be an insult. We're gonna talk to him at the back end of the show. A couple things. Maybe we'll get to talk to him about the joint resolution of disapproval. That's the technical name for a measure that is coming up in the Senate later today that would basically restrict some arms to Israel. It's a historic vote in the sense that the Senate never allows kind of floor votes on blocking weapons to Israel. There's a particular provision of law that allows any senator to get such a measure onto the floor. Bernie Sanders has gone through that very complicated process to make that happen. So that's going to happen later today. The advocates of it are hoping for maybe 20 votes max. Like, they're not expecting it to pass, but they think if they can get above 20, push closer to even 30, that at least it sends a shot. One other thing we won't get a chance to talk about, but since we won't be doing a show before then, November 24th, it's going to be a revolution in Pakistan. So it's going to get wild.
You heard it here first.
Imran Khan has called for massive nationwide protests, and particularly focused on Islamabad. I'm hearing that in Pakistan, the government now, military government, is basically barring buses from bringing people to Islamabad, shutting down gas stations, doing everything they can to try to prevent millions of people from descending on the capital. Well, they believe that Trump is more sympathetic, much more sympathetic than Biden to their democracy movement, which is interesting and probably also true.
Although then you have to talk about people like Tulsi Gabbard and others that'll be around Trump who might deal with these questions before they even get to Trump.
Well, yeah, but who knows? Who knows where she comes down on that question? It's going to be extremely interesting.
Yeah.
Rick Grinnell, who's very close advisor to Trump, has played footsie with the Imran Khan kind of movement.
Very interesting. Yeah. All right.
Right before the election, he was like retweeting photos of himself with like Imran Khan or whatever. It was like
Really?
sending subtle signals. He wouldn't quite say anything positive, but he was sending very subtle signals that were picked up loud and clear. So Imran Khan is thinking like, this is my shot, that we're going to kick it off now, and we're going to stay in Islamabad until Trump is inaugurated and see what happens.
Well, if you care about this issue, you'll want to stay tuned to Ryan's coverage here on Breaking Points, because it is truly incredible.
It's coming to a climax, it looks like.
Fascinating. All right. Well, let's start with the A block and Trump's decision to nominate Howard Lutnick, who was, we can put this up, A1, who was under consideration, very seriously under consideration for Treasury Secretary. He's now being nominated for Commerce Secretary. He's the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. He had been pushed by Elon Musk as a disruptor for the Treasury Secretary job. Trump is apparently very nervous about the markets. This is some of the reporting is that if you nominate a disruptor for Treasury, it could affect the markets in ways that Donald Trump is very sensitive to how that reflects on the president. So he doesn't want to, reportedly, this is the theory, I think it's actually probably a pretty good one, Ryan. He doesn't necessarily want to spook the markets too much by putting a disruptor like people think Lutnick could be. I'm not sure how true it is that Lutnick would be a disruptor, to be honest, but he's at Commerce now. It's sort of a loss for him.
Yeah, I think Trump was spooked when some of his Gates-like and Gates appointments kind of spooked the market. And started creating a lot of volatility. There's this famous anecdote from when James Carville and Bill Clinton first took power in 1992. They came in with these, I'm not going to call them ambitious plans, but they came in with plans. And they were immediately confronted by their economic advisors saying, if you do X, Y, and Z, the bond market is going to respond this way. And when the bond market responds this way, that changes all your calculations over here in this way. You're actually already seeing 10-year treasuries falling and mortgage interest rates increasing because the market believes that Trump's policies of mass deportation and tariffs are going to be inflationary.
Right.
And so the bond market is already kicking Trump's rear end. So the famous anecdote is that Carville said when he died, he wanted to come back as the bond market because it's the most powerful institution in the world. It's still true. And so I think, and Trump intuitively understands interest rates because his entire real estate play for decades was just an interest rate and cash flow play. So he really has a feel for interest rates in a way that most politicians don't. And that's why I think he berated the Federal Reserve so effectively throughout his first term, the first president to really kind of break that wall between the supposed independence of the Fed, which is not independent, it's a political institution, and the elected leadership in the country. So yes, I think you're right that he's being dragged around by his tail by the bond market here.
Well, and Lutnick was the co-chair of the Trump transition, and he's been sort of stumping for Trump on CNBC and has for a while, which Trump is also reportedly not very impressed with CNBC. He's been watching the morning show over on CNBC, and Lutnick had some really viral moments, like giving this defense of Trump, or this, it was even like, you could call it offense, going on offense for the Trump position. And, on tariffs and actually taking the full Trump economic agenda and trying to sort of put his Wall Street spin on it. One question I have for you, Ryan, is what does he bring from Cantor Fitzgerald in terms of like either baggage or advantages going into the commerce job?
Well, it's the pedigree, the credibility. Trump wants somebody who has, went to the right schools and worked at the right banks to signal to the markets that this person's not a crank. Well, he doesn't want the guy from like Birch Gold as his Treasury Secretary.
Mike Lindell for Treasury.
Yeah, Mike Lindell as Commerce Secretary. Like that's not going to fly. And so it's not about baggage. Like I think he's looking for some type of credibility. And I think you can tell how upset he is about the fact that he had to name him Commerce Secretary by the fact that when he announced the pick, he said he will also oversee USTR, which is the trade representative. So he's like, okay, fine, I'm not getting my Treasury pick, bond market, you win, but my Commerce Secretary is going to run trade policy.
Right.
And the USTR, this is the trade representative, Robert Lighthizer, who will probably get that job.
But Trump is probably...
It's a cabinet level pick, and it doesn't really report to any agency, but what he's suggesting is Lutnick is going to be the direction of trade, not whatever neoliberal banker I'm forced to appoint.
This goes with
Treasury.
I think this goes with your theory, though. He's everyone expects this to be Robert Lighthizer. It seems like the most obvious appointment that Trump could make, and I wonder if he is slow walking it because he's trying to dish it out to the markets in a different clip to avoid any.
Although I think
massive...
I think the markets wouldn't freak out about Lighthizer, because he's the devil they know.
True.
And the devil they don't know, because they know that Lighthizer's not actually going to do 20% tariffs on everything.
How dare you?
That he's going to do much more targeted ones.
200% tariffs.
Yeah, and the way you do it, you do tariffs on everything, and then you waive it for Europe and Africa and Southeast Asia and India and South America, and by the end you're like, oh wait, this is just
Antarctica.
This is just China and Antarctica that are getting hit with this. There's also some talk that maybe Lighthizer gets a trade czar position, which kind of almost is over top of USTR. But I think the basic point is yes, this and Marco Rubio are one of the times he blinked. Now, maybe he comes in with some, radical Treasury Secretary nominee, but I wouldn't think so, because he was looking for somebody who had credentials and bought into a lot of Trump's economic policy. The Venn diagram of that is like one guy. Maybe if there are any more, I don't know them.
Well, speaking of whether Trump is blinking on some of these, let's put A2 up on the screen. He made another nomination later last night. After passing her over for Commerce, Tara Palmieri wrote, I'm hearing that Linda McMahon is the lead contender for Secretary of Education. She's co-chair of the transition with Lutnick, actually, and former head of small business admin during the first term. I'm hearing that by Friday, all of the major cabinet postings will be announced. Now, Trump made that official hours after Palmieri reported it. It was like 8 p.m., something like that. So Linda McMahon is not somebody who has been involved in the education world at all. People who work on conservative education policy, and it's a fairly big ecosystem, is not, they don't have any familiarity with Linda McMahon as an education reformer.
Yeah, she won, and I remember this, because she ran for Senate in 2009.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. She spent $50 million of her and Vince's money.
Founders of WWE.
To run for Senate, and it was just an utterly insane campaign. And it was winnable because it was in the backlash period against Obama winning. A year later, Republicans, with Scott Brown, won a Senate race in Massachusetts. So it wasn't an unwinnable race in Connecticut. She, at the time, she had just been elected to the Board of Education in Connecticut. But that was like a make work kind of credential gig to put it on your resume, so that you're not just Vince McMahon's wife running for Senate. You have something that you can point to. So basically, that's her experience. I think she's been on the board of some schools.
Yeah, she's like.
Most rich people have been on the board of schools.
Yeah, well,
you give money to the school and they put you on the board.
How could you show up at the annual ball without? Yeah,
it's
it would
hard
be
to
uncouth.
Not be on the board if you're giving the amount of money that they're giving to these schools. Yeah.
Right. So, but anyway, all that is to say, she was in the running for Commerce. So Trump gives Commerce to her co-chair in the transition, Lutnick, and then slots Linda McMahon into the education role. Betsy DeVos obviously was his education secretary last time around, and DeVos, who had a rocky confirmation actually, spent decades and decades deeply enmeshed in education policy in a way that frankly was terrifying to people who oppose school choice and voucher systems and all of that. And I'm sure—
we published a book about her called Schoolhouse Wreck.
I remember this. Yes, that's right. So if you're on the left, Betsy DeVos's decades of experience in education policy is actually like a huge threat. Linda McMahon, incoming, Donald Trump says we're going to send education back to the states. That was part of his statement nominating Linda McMahon last night. That should be much less terrifying to anybody who is opposed to conservative reforms to the Department of Education, because I don't understand how she'll have the appetite for pretty radical change, to be honest. So the appetite and the know-how for that, it doesn't seem like it's a deep, unabiding passion of hers, and it doesn't seem like, there'll be people at the Department of Education that are more from the DeVos camp, but
I'd say less terrifying from the left perspective than DeVos, but it seems like the play here is that this is a win for kind of the MAGA world, because she's a close ally of Trump. She's going to do what Trump asks. she's definitely not going to buck him with her own education ideas, which means that
Does she have education ideas? Though,
exactly,
seriously.
that's the point. Yeah,
Right.
and then the MAGA world that does have education ideas, let's say, and Chris Rufo, is he welcomed back into MAGA world after his support of
Yeah.
to DeSantis?
Yeah.
He's back in.
Yeah, everyone's welcome back in, honestly.
unfortunate.
Except as long as you weren't like a Jeb person.
Okay. Yeah.
But even then.
Yes, it's big rainbow coalition come back together. So for people like Rufo, I feel like this is a victory because it's a kind of weak secretary who's going to then be able to be pressured to do particular things.
Or will be, because she doesn't have the like conviction to go along with a Rufo, will block it because it seems unpopular. I mean, I think that could definitely cut both ways. And I would imagine if you are a Rufo, and that's why I think this is an example of Trump blinking, because the one area of policy other than taxes that the conservative movement has a very robust ecosystem in is education policy. And there are a lot of very radical people in that space who have a lot of ideas, especially just germinating over the last half decade, have a lot of ideas about reform for the Department of Education and want to go like run wild, as Trump says he's going to let Bobby do at HHS, and would love to do that at education, and he went with Linda McMahon. So in a sense, yeah, maybe she's really malleable and maybe she can be pushed around a little bit, but also if you lack the like stomach for, when you have those activists showing up outside the Department of Education saying you're starving children in the inner cities, or you are, making kids worse off, and you succumb to the pressure rather than sort of digging your heels in and fighting, as some of these education people on the right would want you to do, then, and Betsy DeVos probably would have. She stuck to her guns on Title IX. She was a little delicate about it, but all that is to say, I don't know what Linda I genuinely just don't know.
It's not the culture warrior that the culture warriors would have wanted.
And there are a lot of culture warriors on education in the right.
Yeah, so actually maybe dodged a bullet. We'll see. Nobody knows how any of this is going to go.
It's true. Even Randy Weingarten put out a fairly anodyne statement about Linda McMahon and said, we look forward to learning more about Linda McMahon, instead of saying, like, this is just another example of Donald Trump.
They'll probably rush to confirm her.
We'll see.
Like, let's hurry up and because who knows what could be coming elsewhere. And so Trump has yet to name Baltimore real estate developer Stringer Bell as HUD secretary. He did name Dr. Oz to run the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I stole that from somebody online. Be a hilarious pick. So yeah, Dr. Mehmet Oz to run Medicare. This is reporting from the 2022 race against John Fetterman, in which Dr. Oz is pushing for Medicare Advantage for all. And so this is actually a pretty layered and interesting debate here, as the lever points out, because Dr. Oz is so stinking filthy rich. He owns a bunch of United Health Group and CVS stock, and they make a lot of money from Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage is a privatized form of Medicare, which, if you're watching this and you're over 65, or you have parents who are over 65, there's a 50% plus chance that you're on Medicare Advantage. I think it's something about 52% of people on Medicare are actually getting Medicare Advantage now. And from the left posture on Medicare Advantage for many years was that it is just straight up bad. And one of my first investigative stories 15, 20 years ago was a dig into the way that insurance companies were using Medicare Advantage to rip off both Medicare and patients and doctors and everybody else, just to make profits for themselves. Under the Biden administration, there has been a crew of people running CMS that have really cracked down on a lot of that. And so it's not. I don't think it's as principled an argument as it was framed as before, because there are ways, and Florida has shown the way of ripping off regular Medicare in incredible ways. This setting up fake wheelchair companies and billing the federal government for $100 million and then shutting your post office box down, moving to the Caymans or whatever. The problem comes in with what the rules are, who's in charge, who has the power in that political economy, and if you actually are regulating it in a serious way, that having having private brokers involved isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. And for Dr. Oz to say he wants Medicare Advantage for all, that's fascinating. That's basically like a publicly funded private health insurance option, which compared to our current system would be a vast improvement. Now, it's
That's
not like
interesting you say that.
It's not like he's going to get it through. And it was his response to Fetterman being for single payer when that was more popular back in 2022.
So Medicare Advantage in practice is something that's criticized. Like you criticize Medicare Advantage in practice, but if we expand it to Medicare Advantage for all, because it creates a private-public option type dynamic, that would be better than the current system. Thus,
It would give more coverage to more people, and so
not that he'll really have control over this.
So Medicare Advantage is bad when it's run by scammers who go around to old people and say. So basically, the way Medicare Advantage runs is you say, all right, Medicare will pay you X amount, pay this company X amount, which is supposed to be equal to what Medicare is paying per individual, plus a little bit. And then you are going to do a better job for less money, because that's what the private sector says it can do. And so it's at its worst when people go around and say, we're going to give you vision, we're going to give you dental, we're going to give you hearing. And then when you sign up for it, you find that the actual coverage when it comes to those areas is skeletal at best. And it's just designed to like trick you into signing up for it. Now you're stuck, and it actually has narrow networks, and you're getting ripped off and you're getting worse care. The best version of Medicare Advantage is when a private company says, okay, we're going to take a health-first approach. And there are companies that are doing this, that are saying, it is in our financial interest, because we're getting, let's say, $20,000 to take care of this person's health care for the year. If we can get their health problems at the front end under control,
Right.
and then they go to the hospital less, they go to the doctor, they get sick less, they need fewer medications, then we save money. So therefore, we are going to invest in exercise, nutrition, preventive medicine, like making sure that it's easy to go to the doctor to get a checkup, like those things that then they argue save money in the long run. If that's the version of Medicare Advantage that prevails, who would argue against that? Because it's not that people want lots of medical care.
Yeah.
People would rather be healthy.
Nobody wants to go to the doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want your bills to be high.
Yeah.
And if you can align those incentives, that's interesting.
So
maybe when Dr. Oz sits down with the people who are at CMS now, and they show him what they're doing, he might be like, you guys are doing good work here. Let's keep those. Now, at the same time, he's going to push Medicare Advantage hard. That means by the end of Trump's term, I've seen estimates that have said 75% of people could be on Medicare Advantage, which is like you're basically fully privatized Medicare at that point, which is scary.
He doesn't, this rule, obviously you would need Congress to do anything really dramatic. So he can essentially go,
he can do a lot without Congress.
To overhaul the American healthcare system, he would need.
Oh, yes. He couldn't do Medicare Advantage for all.
But he could sort of tinker with the regulatory policies significantly in order to incentivize Medicare Advantage plans.
Yeah, there are small tweaks he can make that could juice signups, like just making it the default, putting it on the website, like pushing a little harder to seniors.
Subsidies probably to different directions.
Yeah, tweak the benefit of it. Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting.
But it's ripe for corruption, but also could make things better. Like, we shouldn't pretend that regular Medicare is perfect.
Yeah.
Don't kill me for that.
I was going to say.
But it's not.
Okay, Bernie. Yeah.
Bernie would agree. Bernie absolutely agrees with, not necessarily that Medicare Advantage is the answer, but that Medicare as it is needs serious supplementation.
Yeah.
That's why he's always arguing it needs to have dental, because Medicare doesn't currently cover dental, vision, and hearing.
Yeah, it's a serious, and
that's the way that Medicare Advantage creeps in.
Yeah, no, I mean, honest leftists like you and Bernie are pretty clear-eyed about the problems there.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.